In this video, we discuss about different ways of writing functions in C language. There are four categories of writing functions in C language, four different ways of writing functions. First one, functions with no arguments and no return value. Second one, functions with arguments and no return value. Third one, functions with no arguments and return value. Functions with arguments and a return value. We see one by one. Now see this example. There are two functions, f1 and f2 functions. Assume that f1 function is calling f2 function. Now based on these examples, we discuss all these four types of function categories. Now first one, functions with no arguments and no return value. That means now f1 function is not sending any arguments to f2 and also f2 is not returning any value also. Let us try to understand this with a simple example. Now we want to find out addition of two numbers. Addition of two numbers. By using this concept, we try to understand all these four different types of functions. Now in order to find out the addition of two numbers, now f1 function is calling f2 function, but it is not sending any arguments. Now what happens here? Now f2 function must take 10 and 20 values. It must take 10 and 20 values and then it must find out 30 value. It must find out 30 value and then it must print 30 value. Now this is the responsibility of it must print print 30 value. Now it becomes responsibility of f2 function to take two numbers, find out their sum and print 30 value. This is how the statements are executed in the first case. So f1 function is not sending any arguments. At the same time, f2 function is also not returning any value to the f1 function. That's why f2 function is reading two values 10, 20. It is finding out sum 30 and at the same time it is printing value 30. This is the scenario of first case, functions with no arguments and no return value. Now let us take second one, functions with arguments and return value. That means f1 function is calling f2 function, at the same time it is also sending arguments. Now see this example, the same case. Now f1 function is calling f2 function, at the same time it is sending arguments. It is sending two parameters 10 and 20. Now what f2 function needs to do here? It will calculate 30 and it is not returning any value. That means it has to print 30 in f2 function itself. It has to print 30 in f2 function itself. Why? Because it is not returning value to f1 function. This is the scenario in the second case. f1 function is sending parameters and f2 function is calculating their sum and it is printing 30 value. Now coming to third scenario, functions with no arguments and return value. That means f1 function is calling f2 function, but it is not sending arguments. Now what f2 function has to do here? It has to take two values, let us say 10 and 20. Now it will calculate their sum 30, but it will not print 30 in f2 function. Why? Because it is sending a value to f1 function. At the end of the f2 function has to return a value. Now what is the value that is returned to f1 function? That is the sum value. What is the sum value here? 30. Now 30 is returned to f1 function and in f1 function it will print it will print or it will make use of value 30. It will print 30. This is the third scenario. In the third scenario, f1 function is calling f2 function, but it is not sending any arguments. So f2 function is reading two values 10, 20. It is finding out their sum and it is returning the sum value. And coming to the fourth scenario, functions with arguments and a return value. That means f1 function is sending arguments and also f2 function is also returning value. Now for this example, f1 function calls f2 function and also it sends two arguments 10 and 20. Now what f2 function does here, it will calculate sum of 10 and 20. It will calculate 30 and 30 is returned to f1 function. Now what is the return value here? 30. 30 is returned to f1 function. Now f1 function will make use of that particular 30 value, or let us say it is printing 30 value. It is printing 30 value. In this fashion, we can write functions in different ways. Now one question arises, then which type of category we need to apply in a particular program? Then it depends upon the application we are writing. In some cases, we need to send parameters to the function and we need to get return value, and in some cases there is no need to send parameters to the function. Likewise, it depends upon the application that we are writing. This is about different ways of writing functions in C language.